that, we go to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Ross. He's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I wish to add my name to the list of those that have thanked you and the ranking member for bringing this bill forward. I particularly like certain incentives in there, incentives that give charitable organizations and nonprofits opportunities to invest in energy and water conservation, in the remodification and building of housing. I think that's very, very important. I particularly like what my colleague from Kentucky, Mr. Barr, discussed with the Move to Work programs. Those are great incentives. I mean, I think it's important that a lot of this is temporary, but it's become multi-generational, and we need to do all we can to make sure that we provide incentives not only for good housing, but also for the opportunities to gain dignity through work. Section 103 of this particular bill is an interest of me, and it has to do more with the modified means testing in terms of those that stay in the homes and whether they are overqualified financially to be in there. For example, my colleague from Florida, Representative Jolly, and I have been focused on reducing waste and fraud within HUD and to ensure those that rightfully are in need of assistance are able to receive it. A recent HUD Independent Inspector General's report revealed that over 25,000 families currently in taxpayer-supported housing exceeded the maximum allowable income threshold to qualify for federally subsidized housing. For one instance, a New York family with an income of nearly $500,000 is paying $1,574 a month to live in a taxpayer-subsidized public housing. In another unfathomable incident, a family had personal assets of over $1 million while living off the backs of taxpayers. With an ever-growing wait list for housing assistance for those truly in need, these incidences of waste, fraud, and abuse should be eliminated. Therefore, my first question is to Mrs. Burns. What is your perspective regarding tenants who remain in public housing but have the financial means to afford non-subsidized housing, thus opening up an opportunity for those who should be in line for that type of assistance?
My expertise is in privately owned housing, not public housing, but I can respond this way. I think it's incredibly important to catch fraud and abuse. Just this morning, National East Housing Association, myself and our executive director were meeting with HUD to talk about the EIV program.
Right.
And the way that program is working. We believe strongly that it is essential to catch fraud and to put teeth in when we catch residents that have misled us on their income and miscertified, that there be teeth rather than just a slap on the wrist and say, please pay us back when you can.
So would you support that Section 103, that after 2 years, that if their income is in excess of 120% of area median income, to charge the tenant the fair market value for the housing?
It seems to make sense to me. As I said, I'm not a public housing person.
No, I agree with you. Moving on, I have a good friend of mine that from Florida who now lives in Atlanta, Georgia, who's head of a nonprofit organization called Impact. I don't know if any of you all have heard that, but the Impact Group provides housing for homeless veterans, amongst others. But they have a tremendous program that incentivizes the private sector to invest, and then they'll assist not only in temporary housing, but finding employment, taking part of their wages to invest in a deposit that eventually they move on to work. The company's in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and they're searching for more ways for private sector participation rather than depending on the Federal Government. And I'll tell you, I think what's happened over this last few years in housing, being able to leverage private investment to create greater housing with certain guarantees of Section 8 housing and other vouchers has been a great program in order to manage and maximize the amount of housing we have out there. Since it was established in 1992, the Impact Group has grown such that over 90% of the families that graduate their program remain independent of assistance a year later. My question, Mr. Merritt, to you and to anyone else is, given our tight Federal budget environment, I mean, let's face it, we've got competing interests for Federal dollars. How can local and State housing agencies leverage their assets better and find other financial tools to incentivize the private sector to invest in these types of programs?
Being an administrator of a public housing agency, we look at that sort of through the eyes of the HUD regulations, and I know the rental assistance demonstration is something that's that's underway and is a way to bring in private money into the public housing system. But it also needs the public investment as well, because it's been invested in for a long time, and there is investment there that needs to be protected. So the capital fund program to keep things in repair is important to local public housing agencies.
And furthering tax incentives, furthering tax incentives for the private sector to invest should be good as well, shouldn't it?
It should. Through the low-income housing tax credit system is also very important.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you.